Hi everyone, my name is Kishan and I am pretty much obsessed with stand-up comedy. And in this video I would okay, so you can see the lighting has an issue. Anyways, in this video I would like to talk about how my obsession for stand-up comedy began, and I wanted to make you guys aware that this would be a non-edited video so you could see all this, lighting fumbles and everything. So I would like to talk about how, as a almost 31-year-old Indian, I got introduced to stand-up comedy, and how I got to know. See, I'm not a comedian. I'm just someone who's obsessed with it, and I've never approached, I've never tried it, but I have been introduced to stand-up comedy for a while now. I've been, exposed to it, and I just love every part of it. So how did it all began if I'm talking about it? So I think the start was basically, I guess most of the Indians, if you're in the, if you're a millennial or if you're like an early Gen Z, like if you're belonging to the 90s, your introduction to stand-up comedy, just like me, was the Great Indian Laughter Challenge. It had contestants like, you remember, Raju Srivastava, Sunil Pal, and I was like, and they just used to make jokes, like your typical husband and wife jokes, political jokes. Like if you're from US and you're watching this, just you can think that Rodney Dangerfield was my exposure to comedy. In that time, I was like, that they're just making jokes. They must be thinking about those jokes on spot and they're writing, or maybe they have written it like once and just performing. Anyways, Laughter Challenge ran for multiple seasons, and I think all of us lost interest after 3 seasons probably. Then there were a lot of other shows like Comedy Circus, where you got to see Kapil Sharma, Krishna Sudesh, Shakil, and so many other comedians. But this phase was very temporary, I would say, in India. And then came Abhishek Upmanyu and the era of this modern stand-up comedy. Abhishek Upmanyu did a video, I remember that video was called Porn that time, but I think he has changed that name to Besharam. And Indian Insults and Comeback. And I think that was the video that actually brought revolution. There were other videos. There were Rivaldo, there were Apur Gupta's video. There were a lot of other videos, but they were not getting that traction that Upmanyu's these two videos got. So I think that was a major turning point in for Indian stand-up comedy. See, even Veer Das was performing that time, but not everyone was exposed to it. So I guess that, okay, by the way, this is a tube. I'm just keeping it as a fidget to, calm myself down. Where was I? So I think after Abhishek Upmanyu, this stand-up, the modern stand-up era, and like I could call it like the modern stand-up era, started, and it kind of got revolution. See, this is my first video, so I'll be fumbling a lot. Anyways, so after Abhishek Upmanyu, this era started, and we got to see so many comedians finally getting the exposure they always wanted. And just like you, in the beginning, I thought that it was all improv, that they were doing it like, they were just doing it on spot. Not only this, I didn't even know that stand-up comedy is an art. I just thought, okay, these are like, they're comedians and they just tell jokes. I had no idea that this world is so wide and so many months and even years go into this process of writing jokes. And I had no idea that how many times a comedian has to perform their joke to make it like precisely perfect. So I got exposed to Abhishek Upmanyu, Akash Gupta, Vipul Goel, and then I came across a video of Varun Grover. And then I realized that I'm more of a satirist kind of guy, because once, like, I remember seeing that video of Varun Grover's Parrot and Padmavat, and I fell in love with comedy instantly. That was where my love for comedy began. No, it was not, my stand up love didn't begin in US and English comedy. No, it began when I first heard Varun Grover, Padmavat, and Parrot. Then, and I guess it was at that time that I was like obsessed with sitcoms also. I knew that Ricky Gervais is a funny guy who has created The Office. So then Netflix was there, and I got Netflix, and then I started watching US and English stand-up comedies. And the first stand-up I guess I watched, that was Ricky Gervais' Humanity, and that was it for me. When I watched Ricky Gervais' Humanity, I realized that jokes aren't just jokes. There is a build-up. There is everything, and I guess I'm so lost in my thought because I've not prepared this. But anyways, I think I watched Ricky Gervais' Humanity. There were so many jokes, and I realized that I was quoting him all the time. That like I was going to my friend, I was like, "Hey, buddy, I'll tell you a joke," and I was like, "Wait, I am telling him the exact joke that I heard, but why is it not funny from my mouth?" And then I realized that delivering a joke is everything. How you deliver a joke, how you deliver an experience is everything. How you tell a story is everything, and that's what makes it funny. And that's like as important, not if not more, than the writing of your joke. Um. Anyways, then I watched Ricky Gervais, and then I guess I read somewhere that Dave Chappelle is a very big comedian. He's a very huge name in stand-up comedy. And then I watched Chappelle's video, and as an Indian who was not exposed to the world till then, I found why I was like, why is it funny? Like I didn't see Killing Them Softly for what it's worth. I saw Dave's recent stand-ups on Netflix, like Sticks and Stones, The Bird, The Bird Revelation, Equanimity, and everything. And I was like, why is it funny? This is not a stand-up. This is not stand-up comedy. Then I got exposed to a Scottish comedian called Daniel Sloss. And that was the moment that I realized that no, I am going to be obsessed with this art form forever. I watched Daniel Sloss's Dark and Jigsaw on Netflix, and I watched them at least 5 times in one go. Yes, I watched both that special at least 5 times in one go. And I realized that okay, stand-up comedy is not just about making people laugh. It's about making people, as I like to remember this Norm Macdonald quote. Norm said that stand-up comedy is the art of making a bunch of people make a particular sound at the same time. Sometimes the comedians make the audience frown or go ooh. Sometimes they make them applaud, and sometimes they make them laugh. And every single thing and every single expression the audience give, that's stand-up comedy. After I watched Daniel Sloss's live shows, I started watching Jimmy Carr because he had this dark jokes. And first I was like, he's making jokes on such insensitive topic, and why am I laughing? Is there anything wrong with me? And then I remembered Michael Scott's line that there is no such thing as an appropriate joke. That's why it's a joke. After Jimmy Carr, I think I started watching Seinfeld. When I watched Seinfeld, I realized that Jerry Seinfeld is one of the biggest comedians of all time. And I had no idea. So then I got obsessed with Jerry Seinfeld and how he used to observe things and put it in a way that only he can do. Like anyone can think what Jerry is thinking, but no one has that capacity, has that ability to put it in exact same words like Jerry does. After Jerry Seinfeld, it was Louis C.K. It was Bill Burr actually. Bill Burr had this method of making jokes about masculinity, and like everything was a joke. But he had this kind of trend about misogynist and everything, and I loved it. Then I watched, I guess, Anthony Jeselnik, and then I watched Louis C.K. When I first watched Louis C.K., I was like, okay, this is funny, but this is not out of the world funny. But then, after watching a couple of his special, I was again obsessed with Louis CK. I was like, this guy is not just thinking stuffs, he's conveying it in a way that's like Louis CK. I think Louis CK can read a dictionary and make it funny, just like Norm MacDonald. Okay, Norm MacDonald, I'll talk about Norm in a whole another video. Then I watched Louis CK, and then I went back to watch, then I went back to watch Dave Chappelle. And after consuming that much content, which was not much actually, but after getting into the world of comedy, I realized that okay, Dave Chappelle is the goat of comedy because he's not just talking, he's not just making jokes. You know, he's he's like he's not he's a storyteller. He's not even a storyteller. He's not even a philosopher. He's an artist. Like there have been countless nights when I put Dave Chappelle's stand up in background and fallen asleep because you know Dave has this way that, well, how can I put it in words exactly? That will make you feel that you are a part of, his world. Like you get so focused on watching Dave, on watching him perform, like the kind of focus he has while performing, he somehow controls the audience in such a way that the audience too has that focus while watching him. I got obsessed with Dave Chappelle. Now I remember all Chappelle's special line by line. After Dave Chappelle, see, in between all this, I covered Chris Rock, Shane Gillis, Sebastian Maniscalco, John Mulaney, and but then I realized, okay, these are the comedians who are still giving out new materials. What about the comedians in the past? How about? So then I kind of went into deep research. I found out that Eddie Murphy. See, I'm talking to you as the perspective of an Indian. For me, Eddie Murphy was a hilarious comedy actor. For me, he was never a comedian. But then I realized that Eddie Murphy is also a comedian. Then I found out that Jim Carrey is also a stand-up artist, and even Robin Williams, the guy who shaped our childhood, is also a stand-up artist. Then I explored more and more, and I found out that all the talk show hosts, Conan, uh, David Letterman, Jay Leno, all of them were stand-up artists first. And I realized that I didn't even know like 0.1% of this world. I kept on exploring, and then I found out. See, okay, I found out about Richard Pryor and everything, but I think it was pretty recent, probably like a year and a half ago when I discovered George Carlin. And George Carlin for me is the best stand-up artist there can ever be. I don't think that there will ever be a stand-up artist who would be as good as George Carlin because George stayed relevant for 50 years. And every single of his special is as funny as like he was getting better with age. I just realized that I have lost. I went from somewhere to somewhere else, and I'm pretty obsessed with stand-up comedy, and I think I need to put it into words. God has God, I didn't talk about Norm, I didn't talk about Andy Kaufman, I didn't talk about Lenny Bruce. I didn't even talk properly about Richard Pryor. I didn't talk about so many comedians I love, I admire. I didn't talk about Veer Das. But I guess unfortunately, as an Indian, I've not had the chance to watch many comedians live. I've only watched Daniel Sloss perform 3 times. I watched Jimmy Carr perform, and I will be going to watch Louis C.K. perform live. But I really wish to get more into this world. I want to explore more and more of it. And also, like when I got in this deep into comedy, I found out that Johnny Lever, one of India's all-time, if not the best comedy actors to ever live, also was a stand-up artist. So I guess the stand-up world is pretty huge for me to explore, and I hope someday I'll learn at least 10% of it. And I guess See this. So okay, I guess this is it. It's already like 15 minutes, and I think that I would end this video so that you guys get an idea of my messy head and how much content there is and how much I want to say, but I'm not able to say it. And maybe I can fix this stupid light that that changes with my face position and everything. And maybe next time I can solve this on your channel. So okay, so this was my first video. My name is Kishan Junjunwala, and I would talk more about comedy. Next time I'd pick a topic and talk so that I'll have that control of my thoughts. That's it. See ya. Bye.